So in this video, I want to talk about something that was essential in my recovery journey. Along different parts of the recovery journey, it really was one of the things that contributed the most. So I wanted to make a whole video just talking about it specifically. And for me, that was learning to meditate and developing a meditation practice, learning to sit with myself, learning to stop with distractions and to sit and observe thoughts. Yeah, so I want to talk about that more in depth because I've mentioned it in a few other videos, but it really was important. Honestly, one of the things that helped me in so many ways, and just lay basically the framework for my recovery. And some of the other practices I've spoken about, I was only able to do because of learning to meditate. So let's dive in with that. So basically, I'll just talk about how it started for me. And I just remember early on when I was struggling with symptoms, like maybe in the first year, when things started to get quite bad, and I started to look online, started looking at research online and going on forums and stuff. And I remember seeing a lot of people talking about how meditation was helping them deal with symptoms. It was like if they were feeling a crash coming on, I remember reading somebody said then they would go sit and meditate for like 20 minutes, and then afterwards they'd feel a lot better. So it sounded great. So I was like, okay, I've got to try that. And I started trying to meditate and introducing it, and it really did help a lot with the symptoms. If I think back to it, I remember the first few times it was just like that. Like I would feel the symptoms coming on or getting worse, and then I'd go sit for like 10 minutes and maybe listen to a guided meditation of some sort. And then afterwards, I would feel a lot better. It clearly, and I did that a couple of times and it really helped. So I decided, it just made sense. It was one of the things that helped the most out of anything else. So then as the journey continued, I guess. So one of the things with meditation, or not specifically with meditation, but when you're feeling uncomfortable with symptoms, and often the last thing you want to do is sit, stop, put away distractions, and turn inward or sit in silence and meditate. It's like there can be a strong resistance to it at times, So it was funny. It was like I knew that every time I sat and meditated, afterwards I felt a lot better. Like it was always, no matter how difficult it was or uncomfortable it was at first, it always felt better afterwards. It really, would I say, like, oh, I wish I hadn't meditated. That made things worse. I don't think that happened. But at the same time, it was difficult. It was very difficult to consistently meditate. I guess I would often avoid it. I would be feeling the whole cycle start to play out. Where the symptoms come on, and then the stress response activates in the body, and then then the thoughts would start coming like, oh, should I feel those symptoms and notice those symptoms? Last time that happened, I know there's a crash coming, blah, 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 what have I done, blah, 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 that whole cycle. You could notice that happening, and then there would also be the thoughts like, I should go meditate, I know that helps, but then there would also be like, I really don't want to sit and be in the body right now, it's really uncomfortable, I'd rather distract myself. But every time I did that, it got worse. You can't avoid it. But that's how it was a lot of the time early on for me, where no, let me go watch a video of somebody else recovering, and it would almost be actually just like imagine a future where you're recovered or something like that. But the more I try to run from what's going on in the body, the more prominent the symptoms will become, and that's how the crash So the term crash doesn't feel so relevant anymore, um, because it really was just like an intensification of the symptoms until I turned towards it and stopped running from it. So yeah, the more I would try to distract myself, the worse it would get. Anyway, so eventually I started meditating more. I think it's just sometimes you have to like go through those resistance patterns, let it play out until you get fed up and you're like, shit, I know, like I've done this so many times where I try to distract myself. I know it gets worse every single time. If I really want to recover, got to that point where I was like, I have to do the things I have to let go of the things that I know are keeping me stuck, and I have to do the things that I know will help. And like I was really taking responsibility, but it took many cycles of like going back down and the symptoms getting worse because of distracting myself and not wanting to face what I needed to face. And it took many cycles of that until eventually I was like, something just changes where you're like, all right, I have to do this. Do I want to recover? Do I want to spend the rest of my life playing out this cycle? Or there's things that I know that help, meditation. I know that distracting myself and trying to run from the symptoms doesn't help. So just let's take responsibility for it. So yeah, that's just kind of how it played out for me, I guess. So that was like one of the turning points, I guess. It's like eventually just starting to do what I needed to do. So then the way my meditation practice developed. So initially, when I started to get into meditation more, because I saw the benefits it was having for me, I was using an app called Waking Up. It was a really great resource for me, and it really helped me to develop like a daily meditation practice and to like deepen my meditation practice. So I'd highly recommend the app to anybody else who's looking to get started looking to get started with meditating. It's a really good introduction, but not only for people that are new to it. Like there's a lot of resources on there from different teachers, and some really great ones. So the app's made by Sam Harris, and he's got like an introductory course, which is really good. But a lot of the really helpful stuff was some of the stuff I came across from other teachers and some of the interviews on the app with other teachers. So it's a great resource, and I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, I think you have to pay for the app now. I'm not sure, but it really is worth it. I know there used to be a thing where you could get a scholarship if you couldn't afford it, so you can email them. But anyways, that was one of the first resources, and it really helped me to start meditating more. And then eventually what happened was I started to notice like more benefits from not just like the instant relief of symptoms, like calming the mind, calming the nervous system, the body going out of fight or flight, like hyper alert mode, and into like a calmer state. So that was what initially I noticed that helped me. But the more I learned about meditation and like more looking at thoughts and the mind, so not just from like a calming perspective, from like how the mind operates and like how we cause our own suffering with like believing our thoughts and that kind of stuff, and like opening up a little bit of space between like reacting or like something triggering you, and then just noticing your like the conditioned reaction that would normally play out. But the more I started to meditate, there was like space there where it could be like, oh, look at those thoughts, that kind of thing. So yeah, the app helped a lot with that. And so from there, it was like, wow, this is really kind of life changing. This practice, it was, as I said, it was no longer just about instant relief. It was like I saw after like a couple of months of fairly consistently meditating, maybe for like 10-20 minutes a day, every other day, I was really noticing like changes in things in my well-being, and then in how much I was suffering, how much I was believing the thoughts. It was like it became quite clear, not all the time, but it was becoming more clear that a lot of the time, I was causing my own suffering, or what was causing all of the depression and anxiety, and the real struggle was the thoughts and the relationship to the thoughts. So anyways, it was like, yeah, it became like really important to me. I was like, geez, I can see how valuable this is. So from there, I started to take it more seriously. I was listening to a lot of interviews and different teachers and getting more interested. And I decided to go on a meditation retreat. I'd started considering it for a while because I'd heard a lot of people talking about it's a great way to deepen your practice and to yeah, it's a completely unique experience to take time away to go on a retreat to meditate. So it was like a semi-formal retreat. It wasn't. Yeah, it was 5 days silent retreat. I won't go into too much details about it because it's going to be a long video otherwise. But it was really an amazing experience, and it really was super important, and it helped so much. It was a big step at the time. So like going back to like my health story, it was at a time where I was still like very up and down and like very much I was on the recovery path. I was trying to slightly push myself and do things outside of my comfort zone, but I would still often have flare-ups where I would have loads of symptoms and it would be super like kind of scary and demoralizing and like, oh shit, have I done too much? Like I'm sure many people are familiar with this. So that whole retreat thing was like far away from me. It was like a 4-hour drive. So driving for 4 hours was at the time like a big step up, but it felt worth it, and it was, you know. So anyways, coming back from that retreat, I was now able to meditate a lot more than I had in the past, like noticing the benefits from that retreat. And you know, we were meditating maybe like 4 hours a day on the retreat. So I now knew, I was like, I can meditate. Like in the past it'd be like, let me sit for half an hour a day, and that would be like so much resistance to it, and like, oh no, like the thoughts would be like, oh no, I can't sit for that long, it's gonna be so uncomfortable, blah blah blah. Whereas now I like had experience of sitting for long periods of time, and I was like, yeah, I can. So I started to sit for like 2 hours a day, not every day, but I was trying to maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours a day in total. So I'd sit for like half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the middle of the day, and half an hour in the evening. And it was around this time that my recovery really started to, like, how do I say it? Like unravel, or not unravel, that sounds bad, like unfold and like start to play out. Like I started to actually recover because of, I was facing what I needed to now. And I was taking the time, I was putting away distractions, I was no longer running. I was like, I will sit, and as I said, there was still resistance some of the time, but most days I was sitting for like hour and a half to 2 hours. And it became the most important thing to me. At the time, I was living on my own, and that was already a big step. Like I moved out, like I'd been living with my family for like a year and a half, maybe a year, because, you know, the whole illness thing, I couldn't live on my own. It was like, you know, that closing down phase where it's like doing less and less and less and less. And then, you know, I had a turning point where I was like, okay, I need to do things to recover. And I was inspired about recovery, as I've spoken in other videos, from other people's recovery stories. So then, you know, moved out, and this was all playing out. And yeah, so now I was living on my own. I wasn't studying anymore. So I literally had all this time, and I just dedicated it all to what felt like the most important thing to me. And that was just like deepening this practice of looking inward, exploring the thoughts, the identities, all that inner stuff. So at this time, I came across a YouTube channel called Simply Always Awake. I'll link it here for anybody that's interested, if you're interested in this kind of thing, and I would highly recommend it. I mean, if you want to know what really helped me recover, like properly recover, it was from this stage onward when I started. So he's like a meditation teacher, but it's I don't know how to talk about it if you're not familiar with the subject matter. But anyways, it was about looking at your looking inward, exploring consciousness, your identity, like what is this, meditation, self-inquiry practice, all of that kind of stuff. And it's about, let me put it this way, it's about addressing suffering and how the mind causes suffering through our identification with thoughts, and overcoming that suffering, like realizing that it is possible to live differently, and a transformation is possible, yeah, and to not be caught in that loop of suffering with thoughts in the mind and that kind of thing. Don't know if I've explained that well. Anyways, he's got a book called Awake, It's Your Turn. So yeah, if I talk about the resources that were most important to me, it started with the Waking Up app. then it was this YouTube channel called Simply Always Awake, and the book Awake, It's Your Turn. Honestly, the most like transformative book I've ever read. Like, it took me a long time because it's one of those books where you read something and then you apply it, and it's more about like integration with daily life or that kind of thing. I highly recommend it to anybody that this sounds valuable or interesting to. And as I said, it is. It really helped me. So from that stage on, I was like sitting meditating, quite a bit, and then it was from there that I started to learn all about welcoming thoughts and emotions, and how it's literally just the resistance to what is happening in every single moment that causes the suffering, right? So that's where I've spoken about this in some other videos, where like when a symptom would come, it would be noticing like, what is resisting this? What am I resisting? And then like getting closer and closer to the sensation or the symptom, and then the problem would kind of dissolve. So as I said, I've spoken about this in other videos, but this is kind of now when I was able to start digging into these practices, but like the foundation laid by meditating for quite a while beforehand, I feel was quite important because it gave me the space to no longer be caught up in the thoughts, right? So I feel, so like when I started meditating, it was like a more concentration, like there was different types of practices I would do, but it was mostly like a concentration, mindfulness practice of like learning to focus on an object, so like potentially the breath, and then to notice like the mind wandering, and then to be like, oh, the mind wandered, like let's just bring it back to the breath, and like practicing that more and more, and then your concentration builds and you're able to be more aware of the thoughts without believing them and getting caught up in them. So that kind of practice was really valuable for me for a long time, and then it allowed me to now, I feel like it allowed me to be more able to do these other kinds of practice of like welcoming thoughts and difficult emotions, and noticing like how I was causing my own suffering and what was keeping me stuck, and noticing the beliefs of like, oh, I have this belief that if I go out and do this, I'm going to have symptoms, but it's actually that belief that is causing the whole process. And it's difficult to like address. It's like it takes time, and like you got to recondition your nervous system. But it was all that kind of stuff that like space opened up from developing a meditation practice for like the year beforehand. So all that said, I just wanted to talk about like how it essentially in my whole recovery journey, like that's where I was getting pushed towards the whole time. Like if I look back, and I said this before, that this was like one of the most important transformative things that's happened to me, and it's because it just forced me inward, and I had to keep dropping the things that were keeping me stuck and letting go of all of that and orienting towards what was valuable, and it was this meditation, sitting in stillness, turning inward, that kind of thing. So I wanted to put this video out there, and I've mentioned a couple of resources. I'll put the links in the description, and I just wanted to share this with others. And one more thing, there was also a period of time where when I was doing the more focused meditation practice, there's a book called The Mind Illuminated. I'll put a link for that as well. That was a really helpful book. It's a great book for like an introduction to developing a meditation practice, and like how to deal with the obstacles that come with it, like wanting to distract yourself, like laziness, lack of, like, oh, I should go meditate, but I'd rather not. It has really good advice for dealing with that kind of stuff. And it was actually after the retreat, after reading that book, that's only when I was able to start meditating a lot more. But a lot of this is just how things play out, It was like I had to go through so many things until this is where I turned. So don't beat yourself up if maybe you've tried meditation and you keep like resisting it or whatnot. Things will play out how they need to. But I wanted to emphasize the role that this played in my recovery journey and share the resources that were really helpful for me along the way. So I hope that helps. And keen to hear how this goes for other people.